All right, Marco Palmero, founder of Ulysses in Dubai. In this video, I will discuss with you the opportunity that is Dubai and UAE, either if you want to start a business or buy a business. And this is going to be a very controversial video because I'm not going to be talking about the good things, which I'm sure you know already. I'm going to be talking about the downsides, the risks, and some of the life experiences I went through when I started my company here and when I started looking at buying other businesses. Now, the reason why I want to do this is because I see that a lot of people online are pitching how good the UAE and Dubai are. And it is true that there's tons of opportunities here, but it's also important to understand that there are some downsides and some challenges that you have to face. And many times these people don't bring those to your attention because, of course, they have some vested interest in selling some. So hopefully this can guide you and provide you some clear insights on some of the challenges of the country, some of the things that you will face as you plan to buy or start a business in this particular part of the world. Now, the first point I want to mention is that people say there's tons of opportunity in the UAE. That is absolutely correct. However, there's also a lot of competition here because everybody's aware that there's tons of opportunity in the market. Now, that creates an environment that is fierce. And if you're not prepared to fight for what you want, you're going to have a hard time. In addition, the market share has already been allocated towards the players that are in the market. So the competitive landscape is quite full, quite packed. And from a certain perspective, it is much harder for people to set up a shop from scratch unless they're very good at what they do and they can create some sort of differentiator for their company. They can differentiate themselves in some sort of way. People still believe, to some respect, that the UAE are this untapped market where you can come and just be successful because you're there, because the need for the service is there. But that ain't the truth anymore. It might be the case for other regions, other countries to be more specific, like Saudi Arabia, Oman. But UAE are a small market. They are quite saturated to some respect. And nowadays, you either are excellent at what you do or you're going to have a very hard time, building something from scratch here. On the opposite side, buying a business is a very good option because there are tons of businesses that go up for sale. You can acquire a portion of market share because you're basically start buying something that is running already. And so that represents a very good option compared to starting a business from scratch. However, there is a challenge in buying a business, which is you got to know what you're doing. You got to know how to buy it right. And you got to be very, very careful in what you're buying because a lot of businesses that go up for sale in UAE are not good opportunities. So you got to be able to ascertain which opportunity is the right one and which one you should focus on. That is very hard to do, especially if you don't have a feet on the ground, if you don't have somebody that you're working with that is in the UAE and that has the experience in the market to know how to navigate these issues. So there are pros and cons of both things, of course, both options. What I think I can share from a business buying perspective is that it is interesting to see how many companies go up for sale every single year. And what I've noticed after receiving so many inquiries is that a lot of businesses that go for sale only are like 6, 12, 18, 20 months old. So very young businesses. That made me wonder about a couple things. Well, first of all, most people who start a business here don't know what they're doing because if you need to sell a business after 12 months, unless something tragic happened that forced you out of the country, it doesn't really make sense, and it looks like a pretty dumb decision. And so that leads me to the belief that many people don't understand the challenge of starting a business, and they just think they're going to be successful because everybody's successful in the UAE. But that ain't really the case. A lot of people picture themselves as successful, but in reality, they're not. And so being on the other side of the equation and seeing how many businesses that were young were listed for sale on a weekly basis, I started wondering, well, maybe a lot of people don't know what they're doing when they start a business, and that is actually the case. Many people underestimate the cost and the pain that you need to go through in starting a business here. Sometimes it takes a long time to get licenses, approvals, opening bank accounts. And if you're not prepared to go through that process, that challenge, you're going to be, without cash in a very short period of time. And let's say that you survive that phase and now your business is open, then you still need to get customers in a very competitive environment. And if you're not good at it, you're going to be starving. So that is what I've seen when looking at opportunities. Many people list their business after 12, 24 months because they weren't able to go through this process. And honestly speaking, I don't blame them, because it's hard to build a business from scratch. That's why I stress the concept of buying one that is already working, right? Now, if we're talking about something that is already working, there are many different challenges that I didn't mention so far, but I'm going to mention right now. First one being the fact that a lot of the figures and the reports that you're going to get when you buy a business are not necessarily accurate, independently of who has done the reporting. It doesn't matter if it is a big accounting firm. So that creates a huge challenge from a due diligence perspective, because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to buy something that ain't really valuable. And so you got to be aware of that. Make sure you do your own analysis and know where to find, these skeletons that are hiding. There's a lot of complexity that goes into business buying here. I've been, witnessing that for a long time. Back in the day, I used to believe it was easy to buy businesses here. Then I started going through the process and I understood how different the environment was compared to the United States or Europe for that matter. So there are challenges in both scenarios. Many times people underestimate the challenges in both cases. So to me, it is interesting to see that, despite the fact the opportunity is there, people still fail to understand that you gotta first mitigate risk. And sometimes they jump into the UAE and or in Dubai with a high level of confidence because the country kind of pulls you in, right? You see a lot of people being successful here and you think you're going to be the same, right, by association. But that ain't really the case. You still got to be a capable person and you got to be able to deliver on the promise you make. And so I saw many people being disappointed, and hopefully you're not going to be one of them, right? The thing that is interesting to me is that there's a lot of emphasis around the opportunity factor that the UAE and Dubai represent. There's less emphasis on the things you really need to do to take full advantage of that opportunity. Sometimes people still believe in this crazy dream that just because they are in Dubai, something magical is going to happen to them and they're going to become successful overnight. They don't get that you still got to put in the work. You still got to be good at what you're doing, independently of buying or starting a business. And so what I had to learn over time, even at my own expense, is that a lot of things might not be apparent to you as you look at the opportunity from outside or as you first come to the UAE. But as you work through the process, you're going to understand that there are challenges that you need to navigate that most people didn't mention to you in the first place. And again, some of them didn't do that because they had a vested interest in something they had to sell to you. I think from my perspective, it is important to have trusted advisors that have a feet on the ground here and that really know what are the risks associated with starting or buying a business in the UAE. Because unless you're fully aware of these risks, you're going to make very, very bad decisions, terrible decisions. Because one of the things that is real about the UAE that is dynamic, it's pushy, and it forces you to do things that you wouldn't normally do in other parts of the world, simply because you buy into this dream and into this idea. And sometimes you make less logical decisions and more emotional decisions. I've seen that happening in many fields, including business buying, starting a business, real estate for that matter. And, you know, it's funny because you see individuals of all walks of life making this mistake when coming to Dubai and UAE. And it's sort of like, it appears like they completely underestimate the risk, but they only focus on the potential reward. Sometimes they might even a little bit greedy. And so hopefully you can look at the country with a very grounded perspective in ascertain everything twice or three times before you actually decide to make a decision. And I've learned that, again, on my own expense. Back in the day, I used to jump into things because I really wanted to get stuff done, if you understand what I'm saying. But later, I came to the realization that that wasn't leading me to the best outcomes. And I started looking at things from a different perspective, taking my time, making the decisions, and really making sure I had ascertained the opportunity fully. And that applies for buying businesses, starting a business, also making your own personal investments for that matter. And this is not supposed to be any kind of financial advice of any sort. It's just my personal experience, what I've witnessed on my own skin. And interestingly enough, if you make sure that all these risks are under control, you can still access tremendous opportunities and be successful. That is maybe going to happen at a different time frame that you were expecting, but it's still going to happen. And that's probably what people don't like, because we live in an era where immediate gratification is, part of our daily lives. And in many cases, people online try to sell Dubai and UAE as the place where you can get rich quick. And that ain't the case. It's funny to see how Dubai is pictured by a lot of folks online. I don't necessarily believe it with what they say. I do feel that there are challenges and problems that you need to be able to navigate like any other place. They might not be apparent, but they're still there. And thankfully, from my perspective, I've been able to work with partners that spend 35 years here. So they were able to guide me through that process. But from a more concrete perspective, what are some other challenges of the UAE environment when it comes to buying a business or starting a business? Well, from a buying perspective, what I've seen is a complexity is that there's a lack of understanding around the buying process because everything is still at its infancy. So many times, if you're a savvy person who knows how to buy businesses, you're going to be facing with sellers that don't necessarily understand what you're talking about. And you're going to have to go through a lot of education and a lot of discussions before you can actually get something done. I used to get pissed off by it, but lately I came to the realization that that is just part of the process. The country is evolving. The way people look at things is evolving. And as this process develops and unfolds, people are going to become more accustomed to buying and selling businesses in the conventional way, at least. In terms of starting a business, I think, funny enough, sometimes people underestimate the cost of starting a business in the UAE. I've seen so many cases of businesses that costed guys more than just buying one, really. So, they were like putting a lot of money into starting a business from scratch, finding a place, renovating it, finding the staff, furnishing it, and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't realize they would have invested a lot less money by buying something that was cash flowing already and just adapting it a little bit to feed and suit their needs. And so a crazy realization that I came up with lately is that sometimes starting a business in UAE is more expensive than just buying one, which is crazy, right? But still, that is the case. And sometimes people don't look at buying businesses because of ego and because they're arrogant, because they feel that they want to do their own thing, which partially I understand, but they don't fully get the risk associated with doing something like that. Because after you put out all that money to start something from scratch, then you still need to get the customers. You still gotta be good at what you're doing. You still gotta be generating the revenue. And if you're incapable of doing that, you're gonna be out of business quickly. So there's 2 times the risk that you need to take in order to even be able to take a piece of the profits that are available to you. Instead, when you buy a business, yes, you got to be careful, you got to make the right decisions, but once that is, out of the way, you can enjoy the profits and grow the business from there. Of course, I'm just balancing pros and cons about both options and sharing with you the downsides of both ones. So you can potentially consider those before you make the wrong decision. The times, which is something I mentioned already briefly, the times involved in taking care of all processes are dramatically longer. I mean, they're drastically longer than any other place in the world. And people will tell you, yeah, everything is quick in Dubai, everything is quick in the UAE. Well, chances are they're lying to you. They might be right about some things, especially if they want you to pay something. That might be something they're very, quick at. But when it comes to the delivery of certain things do take quite a bit of time. Starting up a business ain't something that's going to happen overnight unless you're, setting up a consulting license in a free zone, something like that. Or buying a business is also going to take a long time. If you're okay with that,